Chapter 3, Glorious Days with the Hoffman Family. On a hill, flanked with beautiful chestnut trees far above the rushing Danube, throned the proud old castle of Neuburg, crowned with towers and spires, belted with huge stone walls and what once used to be a tremendous moat. An iron gateway led into the ancient courtyard with its carved facades and balconies, and coat of arms of grand dukes and bishops. To the left was a large grey building, less picturesque and less remarkable, where the court attendants formerly lived. It was here the English sisters organized their school and reached fame as one of the most recognized institutions for young girls. On that same hill beyond the castle towered the imposing Hofkirche, which translated means church, built in the 10th century. Adjoining it was a cobbled square surrounding a fountain with a statue of St. Mary. The city hall with its heavy carved doors was its picturesque background, and on three sides it was lined with balconied houses where the dignified burghers, which translated means citizens, of Neuburg lived, through the generations. Just below the square was the old church of St. Peter, which I often passed on my way home from school. And further down was a low portal in a watchtower which separated the upper, and most ancient, part of the city from the lower, and more modern, quarters of Neuburg. At the foot of the hill, bordering the banks of the Danube, was a beautiful park where the royal family of Bavaria often came to hunt. At the entrance of this park was the beginning of the main street, which, winding through the heart of the city, ended at the railway station. Midway the post office was located where all the news was posted and events discussed. My new home was the largest villa on the Münchnerstrasse, close to the outskirts of Neuburg. It was a whitewashed, two-story brick house, almost overgrown with trailing vines and ivies. Looking at it from a narrow alley to the right, I often thought it resembled a miniature castle. For it had a little tower with stained glass windows, beginning at the first floor and extended above the high slanting roof. Above the entrance was neither shield nor coat of arms but the figure of a blessing Christ, carved in stone. Beautiful lilacs, jasmine and roses bloomed behind a low stone wall at the front of the house. Towards the right, and in the back, was a large colorful garden with fruit trees, lawns, and bright flower beds. Currant and gooseberry bushes grew along the fence. To the left, adjoining the home, was a storehouse, part of which was used as a stable. Its flat roof reached the first floor of the main building. It was arranged into an inviting roof garden, surrounded by a cement railing decorated with flower boxes. Here grew small trees planted in pots, and a quaint wooden summer house stood in one of its corners. Just beyond the Hoffman villa was the extensive nursery of gardener Hughes, where he and his three sons worked all day long among the large beds of lovely flowers and neat rows of vegetables. Across the street on the Münchnerstrasse was the Imbacher beer garden. Above the entrance hung a shiny shingle on which was pictured a little laughing man holding his big stomach and lifting a large stein. The friendly burghers, who lived in that neighborhood, gathered here around wooden tables under shady trees. Gay music and the sound of bowling games could be heard until late at night. At the right side of the Hoffman house, across a narrow alley, was a grocery store. Its owner had for generations never found it necessary to change the large placard which read, Karl Riegel, Colonial Waren, Gesellschaft. Here lived, at the time I was in Neuburg, the grandfather, mother, father and baby brother Karl of my two little playmates Frieda and Margaret Riegel. At the outskirt of Neuburg was the factory of which my German papa was the owner. Here, blocks of crude chalk were brought from the Hoffman mine, which was located in a nearby forest. After the chalk was washed, dried and ground, it was shipped to other cities where it was manufactured into soap, toothpaste, porcelain, and building materials. Foreman Heinle was a cross old fellow, and we had to dodge him every time we wanted to play a train, with the little car which ran between a huge wash tank and the drying shacks. He had 4 sons working at the factory, and the one who was assistant engineer let me go with him into the engine room. Once, when he was not looking, I opened the steam faucet. A shrill whistle blew. All the working men started to run, I too ran, and did not come near that factory for weeks. My favorite excursion was to the Altberg forest. Felix, Feeny and I would wander along a highway swinging our hobnail boots over our shoulders. We would pass the large swaying wheat fields and low green hills of the river valley. After 2 hours of steady hiking, we would reach the giant pine trees, birches, and oaks of the forest. Following the winding path over the moss-grown stones, we would see little shrines cut in many of the huge trees. There were always small bunches of flowers beneath them, and we stopped long enough to gather our offerings. Mama had taught us to do so. At the foot of the forest slopes, nestled the little town of Neuburg. It looked as if it had been taken right out of a storybook. Its gaily painted houses with their slanting, straw-covered roofs were clustered together around the village church. One of these little houses was on the Hoffman farm. Its low thick stone wall was neatly whitewashed, and its front was decorated with a scene from the Bible. Painted flower boxes, in a burst of gay colors, adorned the tiny windows, and in the door were 2 openings, each one shaped like a heart. Across a cobblestoned yard was the barn where cows, pigs, goats, 2 horses, many chickens and geese were kept. A sturdy peasant couple was hired by my German papa to work the farm, which provided the Hoffman family with fresh vegetables, meat, eggs and butter. However, most of the products were taken to the market and sold. The farm was also an ideal place for vacations, and here I spent glorious days with my new family.